Well, once upon a time, a group of preschoolers gathered for Sunday school the week before Easter, and the teacher asked, "Does anyone know what today is called?" One little girl raised her hand and said, "I know, it's Palm Sunday." "Very good," the teacher replied, and added, "Now, does anyone know what next Sunday is?" Another child raised his hand and said, "Next Sunday is Easter." "That's right, you are all so smart," the teacher said. "Can anyone tell me what makes Easter special?" This time, the teacher's very own child answered, "Easter is special because Jesus rose from the dead and left his tomb." And the teacher beamed with pride. But she had to laugh when her child added, "And if Jesus sees his shadow, he has to go back in for 7 weeks." I'm not sure that cute exchange actually ever happened, but I like it. It brings a lightness to the narration about Jesus' death and tomb, which, objectively speaking, you think would be pretty hard to do. And actually, in reality, Christians, forgive this illuminating pun, but Christians have been making light out of the tomb for 2,000 years. And as a consequence, we've all grown up with Easter being so buoyant and full of life that we tend to take it for granted that Easter's naturally bright and cheerful. But if we think about it, it is, of course, pretty unusual to have such light and joy over death and a tomb at Easter. The shadow of Jesus' death is here. Not in a groundhog kind of way, but it is here as a memory. And more and counterintuitively, it is a part of the good news. We dance and have joy on Easter because death was and is defeated. Jesus is risen indeed, and he is risen from a very certain death. The shadow of Jesus' death is not background noise to Easter. It is the obstacle overcome. A more telling of the Easter story literally has it as grave news. And the graveness is upsetting to the women that morning. We are told that Mary Magdalene and Mary, the mother of James and Salome, those brave women, flee the tomb with so much terror and amazement that they are fearfully speechless. In Mark's telling, there can be no doubt the shadow of death haunts those women. It includes the death of their beloved Rabbi Jesus for sure, but also the scary mystery of death that haunts all of our mortality. Death, to our way of thinking, seems a vast and frightening darkness which presents an all too real finality to life as we know. And yet, paradoxically, in the shadow of Jesus' death at Easter, we rejoice. And none of us, of course, wanted Jesus to die, and despite what we might otherwise hear, God did not desire Jesus' death. We are not joyful today because Jesus died. We are joyful because despite Rome wanting him to die, he did not. He really did not. God would not let Jesus die. God worked in his followers so they would not let Jesus die. God works in us so we to this day will not let Jesus die. And the end result is we rejoice, because in less than 3 days after Rome caused him to die, God caused Jesus to arise, to have an everlasting experiential reality for so many people on so many levels for so many years, because God so loved the world, death's sting was removed, replaced with the sweet honey of Jesus' way, and his love so being continuing on and on and on. It started out small and unsure. The few women who left the empty tomb did not know what to make of death's absence from the tomb or God's message. Nor did the other male and female followers when they first learned of it. But the women and men of the early Jesus following eventually comprehended and then fully embraced that Jesus and the Jesus movement did not in could not end, would not end. That was the message God sent with the angel. But they had to gather themselves to comprehend it. It took some doing, as it still does. Despite Rome's effort, from Easter forward, God was understood and experienced by the first Jesus followers to have resurrected what was briefly buried in the tomb. Those few followers spread the word that somehow, some way, they experienced God having risen Jesus. And somehow, some way, more and more people experienced Jesus' presence and joined the following that we now know as Christianity. And ever since, many more have experienced the risen Jesus. Some have experienced Jesus' influence on human culture for 2,000 years as he has led the way to more justice and care and compassion in the world. Some have experienced Jesus resonating in their personal encounters with him in his recorded teachings and exemplary life, and in their efforts to follow his teachings and in his footsteps. Some have experienced Jesus beyond history and sacred story, finding him present in remarkable spiritual encounters through holy days like Easter and Christmas, through sacraments like baptism and communion, and in worship like church Sunday services. But also in dreams and visions and prayers and many other means. And all of these experiences come out of the life of a one-time obscure itinerant rabbi whose history would have been forgotten if Rome had had its way. But Rome's way lost. Jesus' way won. And so the wonderful truth is Jesus lives on in one form or another, each form meant to bring, and very often bringing, love into the world. Love is the essence of God's realm breaking in the Jesus pot over and over again. It's the care and the desire for the well-being of others. It is peace on earth, goodwill to all. In the battle of Rome's earthly way of brutal violence led by Caesar Tiberius and his henchmen in Palestine versus God's heavenly way of love led by God and his son Jesus, love won. Love wins. And we rejoice on Easter because love wins. And there's no greater proof of that than Easter. We discussed last week how there can be no Easter without the shadow of the darkness that violently roiled in during Holy Week. That first Holy Week, the light at the start of the week shone brightly, not just in Jesus, but in the hearts of humankind that celebrated with great joy on Palm Sunday the then living human Jesus' life and his glorious ministry. The realm of God was brought into high relief as Jesus entered Jerusalem to challenge the earthly realm of Rome. As Rome's governor Pilate marched in with pomp and military might on one side of town, Jesus rode in on a donkey with joy and love on the other. Pilate was greeted with fear and subdued throng. Jesus was greeted with cheer and shouted out songs. One represented man's reign, the other represented God's reign. And we know now that that first Palm Sunday began a head-on collision between man's earthly realm and God's heavenly realm. Jesus left the light from the humanity that greeted him and glowed that first Palm Sunday, and he entered into the tunnel of darkness that Rome plunged him and his following into. And when Jesus challenged Rome with his peace parade on Palm Sunday and followed it up with his protests in the temple on Monday, Rome and its cronies had had enough. And the rest of the week, Caesar Tiberius and his henchmen threw everything they had in their arsenal of terror at Jesus. And as a result, Jesus died. His followers had to hide. And they and God and all creation cried. And yet, we do not call it Unholy Week. We call it Holy Week because, thank God, love triumphed. Love won. It was awful what Rome did, but it was awesome what God did. Jesus was vindicated by God. Any way we look at it, the tomb could not hold him. Jesus lives. Jesus is risen indeed. And all the ways of experiencing Jesus that God blessed and blesses the world with are truly worth being joyful and bright and singing hymns about. Easter offers hope in God's victory over Rome with love. Easter offers hope in love incarnate in Jesus being lifted up, risen up, vindicated by God. Easter offers hope in love being incarnate in those who follow Jesus' way. Easter offers hope in God's reign continuing to break in through Jesus' followers, through us. Jesus, who cared so much for all and breathed love so courageously, opened a door. He paved a road. He created a way to God being incarnated in human form. After the first Easter, we know that God's here now in Jesus, in the levels of experiential reality that I've already mentioned. Whether it be the reality of Jesus' influence on human culture, Jesus resonating in recorded teachings and exemplary life, or Jesus being present in remarkable spiritual encounters and in his followers striving to love as Jesus loves. What Easter did for Christians is create a way to God through Jesus, a fully human, full of God person whose being lives on so powerfully through time that no books or words or traditions or dogma can trump Jesus. For Christians, you see, Jesus is the decisive revelation of God. There are other ways to God, but on the Christian way, it is Jesus who reveals, discloses, and embodies what can be seen of God in a human life. And not just in an out there beyond us or deeply buried inside us Jesus, but a Jesus motivating and guiding our actions so that we love as he loved. In this morning's Easter story, Mark tells us an angel said to the frightened followers, "Do not be alarmed. You're looking for Jesus of Nazareth who is crucified. He has been raised. He's not here. Look, there is the place they laid him. But go, tell his disciples and Peter that he's going ahead of you to Galilee. There you will see him, just as he told you." Jesus is going ahead of them. Just as Jesus led his followers before, he leads them still. And when the angel finished his instruction, the women followers, we're told, went out and fled from the tomb, for terror and amazement had seized them, and they said nothing to anyone, for they were afraid. As Mark was originally written, that's how the story ends. The women being driven from the tomb. Mark has the Jesus followers being driven out to the empty tomb to follow Jesus' Spirit that has gone before them in the past and now in the present, leading them into the future with a promise he will be there. You see, Mark, the earliest gospel, has a different ending than the other gospels, and it's an ending that matches Mark's beginning, which is also different. Mark does not begin with a Christmas nativity story. Mark begins with the Holy Spirit driving Jesus from his baptism into the wilderness to start what we now know as Jesus' way, where Jesus, relentless and courageous, pursues the reign of God. And that reign is where God's will is done on earth as it is in heaven. God's will is shalom, well-being for all. And just before the words at the end of the mark that we heard Reverend Young read so well, Rome appeared to have stopped that drive and that way by leaving Jesus lifeless in a tomb. That's not the end. That's not the end. Instead of the lifelessness of Jesus in the tomb, his followers find a lively message from God that Jesus, who was crucified, has been raised. He is not here. And the followers are commanded to go and tell others that Jesus is going ahead of you to Galilee. There you will see him just as he told you. Earlier in Mark, sure enough, chapter 14, verse 28, Jesus told his followers that he would be raised up and he would go before them to Galilee. All the circumstances in Mark that lead up to Easter. Jesus' Holy Spirit-driven action, Jesus' way that he develops, Rome's killing Jesus, the empty tomb, the message from the angel, all of that in turn drives Jesus' followers from Easter onward. The Spirit of Jesus, the Spirit of Jesus' life, death, and resurrection now leads them, leads us. Just as Jesus was driven by the Holy Spirit to pave the way of love that brings in the reign of God, ever since that very first Easter, Jesus' followers have been driven by Jesus' Spirit to follow him on the way he set out before them, sets out before us. On that way, the spiritual reality of Jesus may be encountered in varying degree, but not in varying effect. Jesus leads us all to both experience and to participate in the reign of God. The angel's promise of Jesus' appearance has been and is fulfilled generation after generation by following the risen Jesus. May we follow the risen Jesus to bring in the realm of God for ourselves and for others. May we follow the risen Jesus so well that we become the hands and the feet and the voice of Christ in the world. May we do that so well that others experience the joyful Easter news that Christ is risen. Risen indeed.